Hey guys, Trev here from SpineWise, and if you have fatigue, I want to talk to you about different types of fatigue because there are many different types of fatigue. And I'm not talking about pathology in terms of do you have a heart problem or something like that. I mean the functional kind, the kind that you can actually make a difference from just by changing things in your lifestyle. So if this is you, please hang on. I'm going to go right through all this. I'm going to give you some tips as we go through as well on how to correct all that stuff. If you do love our videos though, please like our Facebook page, subscribe to our YouTube channel, turn on notifications, and we'll keep you up to date with all the latest information that we put out. Alright, so let's talk about fatigue. So of course we all know what fatigue is, it's a tired feeling. Some people associate with a lack of motivation, but really fatigue is an inability to get things done, whatever it may be. And there are three specific types. There's three specific types of fatigue that we see here in our office that directly relate to things that will affect you and your life. So the first one is the one that most people aren't aware of, and that's probably the most profound one. The first one is brain fatigue. And this is the fatigue that's classic from chronic fatigue syndrome. In brain fatigue, it's not about you don't have the energy to get going. In brain fatigue, it's just there's no batteries. We relate brain fatigue as being like a remote control car where the batteries are almost dead and it still kind of moves, but it just moves so slowly. These are the people who want to get going, they want to do things, but they just can't get off the couch. It's just too exhausting to get moving. Okay, and we'll come back to how these things work and what they are later. The second one is postural fatigue. Postural fatigue is really, really common. It's probably the most common of a lot. Postural fatigue is fatigue that occurs when you try and stay upright. So this is what happens when people who stand up for a long period of time, or people who are sitting for a long period of time feel like they need to slouch or lean on something. This is our postural fatigue, inability to maintain posture. And most people that I've seen over the years who have talked about bad posture don't actually have bad posture. What they have is an inability to maintain their posture, or what we call postural fatigue. It's very easy to tell which one is you. If you can stand up straight and you can maintain a good healthy posture, you don't have a posture problem. If you can't stay there for a minute or two, now we know what you have is a postural fatigue problem. Okay, really, really common, probably the most common type of fatigue we see. Third one is adrenal dysfunction. So dysfunction of your stress mechanisms, HPA axis issue. And this is a little bit different to adrenal fatigue, but this is a fatigue that comes from an adrenal nature. And with adrenal fatigue, these are people who have all the energy in the world. They're fine, they can do everything they want, but as soon as they do some form of activity that's prolonged, whether it be exercise, going for a walk, after that they feel exhausted, and this is an inability to regulate blood sugar effectively from an adrenal perspective. So let's break these down. So brain fatigue. Brain fatigue is because the brain doesn't have the energy to function anymore. So if we think of ourselves as a big electrical circuit, our brain is a battery that drives our entire musculoskeletal system. So when the battery goes flat, so do you, and it literally feels like you're a remote control car that just needs to be recharged. Okay, so there's a whole lot of different reasons why brain fatigue occurs. Chronic brain inflammation or inflammatory type responses like we see with myeloencephalitis or chronic fatigue syndrome. These are common things, but we also see this with people who spend too much time on technology and the brain is overstimulated. We see this commonly with people who have significant sleep deprivation. These are some of the common things that do it, and it's all just a sign that the brain is unable to communicate with itself properly, and often a situation of what we call temporal discoherence. The postural fatigue is generally a fat metabolism problem. It's an inability to maintain contraction of a muscle for prolonged periods of time, and this is an endurance issue. For most people, this is a sign that you're not metabolizing fat very effectively. It can come from a whole lot of different reasons, the most common one being high levels of insulin or dysfunctional insulin, dysfunctional blood sugars, and the consequence of that for most people is changes in the balance of their essential fatty acids and potential fat metabolism problems. So you don't have to be obese or overweight to have postural fatigue issues or the issues that are associated with that. You can be completely normal. And the interesting thing with it as well is sometimes as little as poor diet for 3 or 4 days can set this thing right off and create those issues with people. So we'll come back to these things and things you can do about it in a sec. The adrenal side of things is when you've pushed yourself too hard, not recovering from day to day, and you keep doing it day and day and day after each other. And what should happen when you do some level of exercise is that your adrenal glands should start producing these stress hormones. That liberates fat, liberates protein, encourages sugar metabolism, and the result of all that is that you should get energized. The energy levels should come up. If those adrenals are not functioning the way they should, and your HB axis is not functioning the way it should, then what tends to happen is as you get moving, you get the energy level, you don't get that drive going, and you just deplete your energy stores. And this makes people tired on the end of their activity rather than full of energy and motivation and being driven. All right, so what can we do about these three things? Because the approach to these three things is actually quite different. And this is where a lot of people get confused with fatigue. Okay, and again, a lot of this is from what we've seen in our office. Okay, so the first thing we look at is with brain, simple things that you can do. The obvious one is take the workload off the brain, reduce the input. Okay, really, really key. This is probably the most important one outside of increased sleep. Okay, improve your sleep patterns and improve or reduce the input into the brain. Now you may be thinking workload, and that is true, and giving yourself time to rest is really, really important, a work-life balance type stuff. But one of the biggest and hardest times that the brain works is when you're involved in using technology. Computer screens, mobile phones, tablets, these are the times where the brain really gets stimulated. And we should all be having at least one totally tech-free day a week. And that's no screen time at all per week to give our brains a chance to recover. So reducing the input into the brain is really critical for people who have brain-orientated fatigue. And I've seen people who simply just doing something as simple as coming away from their phone, who are spending 5, 6, 7 hours a day on their phone, just coming away from that completely settles their anxiety down. So I've seen that in our office as well. Sleep deprivation, we said before, is a really big problem. So increasing the sleep, what we're talking about there is especially evening sleep. So getting to bed earlier and making sure we have good quality sleep, uninterrupted sleep with really good sleep hygiene, which means good routine, getting to bed, a consistent time that you're getting to bed, no tech right before bed, no meals right before bed to maximize the quality of your recovery overnight. The other thing with this as well is getting into what we call the flow, and this was a term coined by a psychologist a few years ago. But getting into flow means take some time where you think about nothing other than what you're doing. So for example, that might be surfing, it might be snow skiing, water skiing, riding a bike. When you're in the flow, basically what you mean is nothing else in life is important as what you're doing there. That's all that matters. So if you're coming down a ski slope at 50k an hour, or even 10k an hour if you're not a good skier, but if you're coming down a ski slope at 50k an hour, at that moment in time, you take your mind off what you're doing at that point in time and you're going to get hurt. Same as if you're paddling out to catch a wave, and you've turned around, you're paddling onto that wave, right at that moment in time, the only thing that's important is generating enough speed to get on that wave and then working out when the right time to jump up is. Okay, so this is where we clear our head. This is getting into the flow. And some people do it that way. Some people do it by riding a bike. Other people do it by drawing, reading, whatever it is. Find your way of getting into the flow and do it regularly. Okay, really important to get into the flow. There's a few supplements we can use in this with this type of situation. Getting your acetylcholine neurotransmitters up can be really helpful, and herbs such as bacopa and huperzine are really important in those type of areas. Andrographis is a herb that there's some evidence to show, early on in the evidence, but some evidence to show that it can reduce inflammation in the midbrain, which is the main area that drives this area. So some people get good results with Andrographis. And then supplements which help improve GABA within the brain, such as B6, magnesium, zinc, even herbs such as magnolia may potentially help in that area as well. Okay, just make sure whenever you're doing supplements that you get the advice from a practitioner before you go down that path. Postural fatigue, as I've said before, this is predominantly fat metabolism orientated. So going on to a low GI diet, so reducing the insulin impact from that, moving into having a higher level of fat in your diet, especially a higher level of omega-3s in relation to omega-6, reducing the vegetable oils in your diet. That can often make a big difference in balancing out those essential fatty acids and improving that. and improving or increasing the amount of aerobic exercise in your diet, which is long going exercise at a very low heart rate, or I shouldn't say very low, but a lower heart rate, not the high intensity interval training type stuff. We want long and slow walks in the bush, maybe slow jogs, those type of things to stimulate our parasympathetic system as well. Some of our blood sugar handling supplements, things like magnesium, vitamin B1, coenzyme Q10 are sometimes great for these people. Essential fatty acids as well, so things like omega-3 supplements, fish oil often help as well, flaxseed oil. A couple of herbs you can use, jamnenma and your berberines. These can help regulate blood sugars. Cinnamon is another one that can do that as well. And all of these can help in this pattern and stop that postural fatigue process. Our final one, adrenal. Really the big one is, you really need to improve your recovery. You're not recovering from day to day for whatever it is. You need to balance out the output versus the input. We need to get the basket back in the right order. So making sure recovery is diet, it's sleep, it's time to yourself. And time to yourself means getting back into the flow. Do things for what you want to do, not what you have to do. Aerobic exercise is really good at stimulating the parasympathetic system, not high intensity, but just slow going, long jogs, walks in nature, and that can help the adrenal stuff too. Simple herbs such as cordyceps, rhodiola, ginseng, licorice, all these things can have beneficial effects on adrenal function. Again, make sure you're really getting some good advice on these type of things, because they can actually have adverse effects on the adrenals as well. B5 and B6 often help adrenal function, zinc as well, and magnesium, especially the chloride form, okay? Magnesium chloride. Chlorides are a precursor that help with the production of your steroidal hormones, and this seems to be a reason why so many people who have this type of adrenal fatigue pattern actually crave salt. They want the chloride to help those processes. So there's 3 different ways that we have fatigue: brain fatigue, postural fatigue, adrenal fatigue. There's a whole lot of different ways. These are some really simple introductions in our office. There's a whole lot of different approaches we take to dealing with this, and it's a lot more complicated than this, but those type of 3 fatigues, there's plenty you can do to reverse them. There's plenty of things you can do to get them back on track. There's tons of things such as infections and stuff that we haven't spoken about that can produce these things as well. But if you do have any questions in regards to it, please feel free to, you can email me directly at my personal email address, which is trevorchakouti@spinewise.com.au. Send me a PM or a DM, post up below whatever you feel is the nicest and the easiest way for you to get in contact, and we'll be happy to give you some advice and help you out, and hopefully get you over the fatigue and get your life back on track. Anyway guys, hope you've enjoyed this video. Please share it if you liked it, and we'll catch up in the next vid. Bye for now.